This happened back in October, just past dusk, while with my hunting partner. We were camped up on a hill above the ravine that we bow hunt every single year. I went there to take a leak on the porta potty that we had set up 100 feet from the campsite. While sitting there, with the glare of the campfire in sight, I noticed a really stinky smell coming from the direction of behind me. I stood up, turned around to see this animal standing there a short distance away, staring at me. I looked at this thing in amazement. It was leaning on one foot, just looking right at me. I was totally terrified. It was white in color, had dark brown skin, an apparent round head, and real deep sunken-in eyes. Although it was about my height, 6'2", it was very wide at the shoulders. I would have to say it was 3.5 to 4 feet wide, which made its waist look thin in comparison. Since I had a shovel to bury my waist, I screamed at the creature and waved the shovel in the air. Once I did this, it sprinted into the woods, down the ravine, at a very alarming pace. I could hear it busting branches as it left the area. My friend came running over, wondering what was wrong. I told him what had just happened, but he just couldn't believe me. That was until the next day, when we went right to the location and found the large tracks going towards the ravine. I think, after him seeing them, he was somewhat convinced that I had seen something very unusual. The other thing I noticed was its hair coloring looked dirtier below the waist. There was also a follow-up investigation, and if there were any other stories, when the property owner found out what I saw, he asked that we didn't hurt them. They mean no harm, which meant they knew that they were around. One of the property owners admitted seeing a similar colored creature. The property we hunt on consists of 150 acres of the roughest terrain here in Ohio. Since I've talked to this witness multiple times, and his story has been consistent year after year, he noted that the creature was only 20 feet away when he saw it. Its face appearing to be dark in color, and no neck was visible. The overall bulk of this creature is what impressed him the most, and he estimated it had to be a weight of around 350 pounds or more. The area has a good-sized stream that flows all throughout the ravine. There is a good-sized cave there that he has seen from a distance, but has never had the courage to check it out. And this area also has had a long history of Bigfoot reports, strange sounds. It's an area that clearly warrants further investigation. A boy of 12 years of age, back in the fall of 1998, was squirrel hunting on his parents' property. His parents own over 100 acres of land, which also has livestock on it. At any rate, the boy, whom we'll call Michael, was sitting just inside the woodline, waiting for the perfect chance to get a squirrel. He heard something running towards him, off to his right, thinking it was a deer. He soon discovered that it was actually a rabbit running through the woods. A moment later, he heard some heavy walking and thought it was a person. It wasn't. What Michael saw was described as between 7 and 8 feet tall, was white in color, and the skin on its hands and face being black. Mike noted that, for a fact, the fingers on the hands were long and slender. The creature rested one of its hands on the side of a tree. He did not see the eyes, but that could have been because of the bangs hanging over them. He only saw part of the ears. He did see that the head was not rounded like a human, but sloped back to a point. He also said it was fat. I finally learned what he meant by fat. It was very bulky from the waist up. Michael saw all of the creature except below the shins, and after about 30 seconds, this creature noticed Michael. They had a brief stare down, and Michael finally gave in by running out of the woods, through an open field and back to the house. As it turns out, Michael was roughly 35 feet from this creature. The witness was sitting on a rock with a shotgun, waiting for a squirrel to come by, so he had been squirrel hunting all day. This sighting also took place on Thursday, October 15th, 1998, around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This took place in high terrain, but also down in a valley. A creek runs through the valley that the creature was running through. After listening to the Bigfoot scream recording that I had heard on the BFRO, I played it for 2 friends of mine, and we all agree that it is exactly what we heard. In the summer of 1999, we were working on a cabin that my friend was building in this county, about 3 miles away. Around 2 a.m., we were all awakened by a series of screams. We had no idea what they were. Later, we figured they were a bobcat. When I listened to this recording, I am positive that is what we heard, and everyone agrees. I've heard it one other time in 1999, but not since then. My friend who actually owns the cabin and his son has also heard the scream on other occasions. I was even dreaming when I was awakened. I think I may have heard a howl in addition to this series of screams, but I can't be sure. A follow-up report was done with this witness, and talking with them, he said the sounds they heard were in no way anything like an owl, cougar, bobcat, coyote, bird, etc. The series of screams they heard were so loud, it woke all of them from a sound sleep. He even downloaded the Ohio sounds from BFRO, played them for the other guys that have heard the sounds near the cabin. They all agreed that is what they've been hearing. What I observed to this day still haunts me. Back in the springtime, May to be exact, I was driving, and on the side of the road, there, looked like a brown bear, just lying there, as if it were hit by a car. I did not completely stop. However, I did slow down to observe whatever was lying on the side of the road, standing up, glanced, and ran off into the distance. This thing, when it took off, stood at about 6.5 to 7 feet tall. After this thing took off, it stepped over the guardrail, that is, on the side of the road. This thing looked like a large man in an ape suit. After the creature, or whatever it was, took off, I did stop, rolled down the windows, but did not get out of the car because I was simply scared. When I did roll down the passenger window, it smelt as if I hit a skunk. The smell could have came from a skunk. I don't know where the smell came from, and I know the smell was there after rolling the window down. I got a chance to speak to the witness, JS, and found him to be sincere and forthright in the description of his encounter. While driving southbound on Route 77, near the Salt Fork Lake State Park in Ohio, JS passed something huddled on the side of the road. It was lying up against the guardrail, between the railing and the yellow line on the edge of the highway. At first, he thought it was a bear, but then realizing that it was a humanoid shape that was in a hunched or crouched position, much like the duck and cover position that the infamous 1950s school children were instructed to do when going through a nuclear alarm test, on the knees with the head ducked low. His first thought was that whatever it was had been hit by a car due to its position and location on the side of the road. Confused as to what had been seen, JS quickly stopped, puts the car in reverse, and as soon as he backs up to it, the creature then stands up on 2 legs, steps over the 3.5-foot guardrail, and walks into the woods. JS said that once he had backed up his car, he was about 15 to 20 feet away from this creature, covered with well-kept, long brownish-gray hair, and the back was hairier than the front. He likened the length and texture of its hair to that Cousin It from the TV show The Addams Family, smooth and flowing. J.S. stated that he did not see its face, but did remember quite distinctly that it had no ears. The head was more of an oval shape, rather than a circular shape, and its head sat squarely on its shoulders. The shoulders were also massive, probably 3 times the width of his own shoulders, and the torso and legs were huge and thick. He also emphasized that the hands were also huge, and they would hang down to its knees. When asked for an estimate on the weight and size, J.S. told me that it exceeded 6'5" and weighed close to 500 pounds, maybe more. He also commented that in the 15 to 20 seconds he observed this creature, he could see such details about this thing because there was quite a bit of moonlight present at the time. After losing sight, he noticed a large pond lit up by the moonlight in the bottom of a nearby valley. With the window rolled down, he noted quite a stench in the vicinity, described as being between a skunk and a fishy smell. He did not feel safe getting out of his car because of what he had just witnessed. While reviewing this encounter, which occurred near the Salt Fork Lake State Park, I found there to be 5 other similar reports occurring in the same area. The Salt Fork Lake State Park borders Route 77 and has a large land area of over 17,000 acres of wilderness, which includes lakes, streams, woods, marshes, as well as the Salt Fork Lake, which is 3,000 plus acres in size alone. I woke up on the morning of April 17th, 2004, at about 5:45 a.m., made my way out of the tent to make breakfast. I was on a camping trip with my father at the time. As I got breakfast ready, I sat down and watched the water boil. And then I heard a loud scream, howl, sounding very much like the Columbiana County, Ohio recordings. As soon as I heard this, I ran down a hill from my campsite to the north bank of the Salt Fork Lake. On my way down, I hear another howl. Both were slightly shorter than the Columbiana recordings, but still the same sound. I know that they came from the southern bank, and I would guess that they were most probably a mile or so away. I only heard the sound twice, and I was still a little shocked and did not tell my father until a few hours after he got up. The howls did not wake up any campers that I know of. And 2 days before this incident, I was walking on a trail and found a series of human-like footprints leading down the trail in the same direction that I was traveling, west. I found one to still be in good condition, so I cast it. It was of a left foot. It measured slightly over 12 inches long and 5.5 feet wide. It had 3 well-defined toes, one that was barely pressed down, and 1 toe that is missing. Although there is a space for a toe in that area in question, other, less defined prints were found. They were in about 4 to 4.5 feet strides. There were also no other witnesses, since my father was asleep, as was the rest of the entirety of the camp. There was also a follow-up investigation report done. I've talked to the witness on multiple occasions, and am quite confident he heard what he claims. The area in question has had a long history of Bigfoot sightings to the present day, and the area he was camping at has had Bigfoot sightings well within the actual campground. I personally examined the cast of the alleged left foot. It was broken in one part, which made it hard to distinguish what it truly could be, although its shape was definitely foot-like in proportion. Looking at photos, seeing the distance between the alleged prints, I can rule out black bear in humans. If there was more detail in the cast and the photos, more could be said. Credit must be given to the witness, since he's only 14, and took the time to photograph and cast the alleged tracks.